Before you begin, it's a smart play to lay out all of the parts so they're easily accessible. Start by screwing the rear sight base index screw into the rear sight elevation index wheel with the 1/16" hex wrench. This screw should be flush with the outside of the index wheel. Now combine the index wheel with the elevation knob. The index screw can rest in any hole in the elevation knob. A detent ball located here places tension on the elevation knob, holding the elevation adjustment in position. Put a dollop of grease in the detent hole and install the spring and detent ball. The grease will hold the ball in place. Slide the elevation knob assembly into the elevation knob slot in the receiver. The detent ball should seat in any of the holes on the bottom of the elevation knob, holding it in place. Now put a bit of grease in the rear sight base tensioner hole. Then slide the tensioner spring into the hole and put a bit more grease on top of the spring. Put the detent ball on top of the spring. Insert the sight base into the sight base hole in the receiver and screw the sight base onto the elevation knob. Don't dislodge the detent ball as you do this. Screw the rear sight base all the way in. Now place the elevation spring in the hollow cavity of the rear sight base. To install the sight base roll pin, you need a rear sight installation tool. It allows you to compress the elevation spring while you drive in the roll pin. Take the body of the sight installation tool and slide it into the receiver from the rear so the hole in the tool body is aligned with the cavity in the threaded portion of the rear sight base. Insert the forked spring depressor into the body of the tool and compress the rear sight base elevation spring. Align the small hole in the shaft with the small hole in the center of the body of the sight installation tool. Slide the tool lock into the tool body and through the shaft of the spring depressor. This will hold the tool in place and keep the rear sight elevation spring properly compressed. Use a roll pin starter punch to start the roll pin in the pin hole. And finish seating the roll pin with a standard roll pin punch. Now you can remove the installation tool. Lubricate the rear sight flat spring and place it in the recess on top of the rear sight base. The hump or curve of the spring should be up. Next, place the aperture on the spring. The large aperture hole should be up and you should be able to read the number 0 to 2 on the back of the sight. Thread the windage knob screw into the aperture from the left side of the base. We've chamfered the leading edge of the screw to make threading it easier. Turn the screw until it's fully seated and adjust the aperture until it's located in the center of the sight base. Now prep the windage knob. Put a bit of grease in the detent hole on the rear face of the knob. Slide the detent spring into the hole and follow up with a bit more grease on the exposed end of the spring. Place the detent ball on the end of the spring. Now take the knob and slide it onto the right side end of the windage knob screw. Be careful and don't drop the detent ball. Align the pinhole in the windage knob with the pinhole in the windage knob screw and use a small punch to hold them together. Use the roll pin starter punch to begin seating the rear sight roll pin. Then follow up with the roll pin punch to fully seat the pin. The pin should be seated to an equal depth from each side of the knob. Once the sight has been installed and checked, you should adjust to proper zero. Start by rotating the elevation knob until H/3 is visible and centered on the left side of the knob. Next, use a 1/16 inch Allen wrench to loosen the rear sight index screw and disengage the elevation knob from the indexing knob. Now rotate the elevation knob without moving the indexing knob so the rear sight is at its lowest setting. I like to move the sight up 2 clicks from the bottom so I have some cushion in my adjustments. This is referred to as the Santos method for battle sight 0. Once everything is set, tighten the index screw to lock the two pieces together. Well, it should feel good having that job behind you. Hope you don't have any parts left over.